Behind the scenes of elite tennis, organizers meticulously map out every possible scenario, from complex security details to the chaotic shuffling of thousands of spectators and daily court schedules. Yet, all those grand preparations completely fell apart the moment a mere warm-up routine unleashed a tidal wave of frenzy that easily overshadowed the main competitive events. Long before Alex Eala ever struck a meaningful ball at the 2026 Miami Open, her name was already echoing through every corridor, dominating every whispered conversation across the sprawling venue. The Women's Tennis Association found themselves utterly paralyzed by this unprecedented phenomenon, leaving onlookers everywhere to vigorously debate how the sporting world should react. Observers fiercely argued whether the governing body was actively giving this superstar the spotlight she deserved, or if the establishment was simply too stunned to capitalize on a cultural earthquake they completely missed. To truly grasp the magnitude of this public shock, one must first picture the incredibly mundane reality of a standard professional training hour. Typically, these basic workouts attract nothing more than a few stray onlookers meandering by, with perhaps a couple of die-hard tennis enthusiasts leaning quietly against the chain-link barriers. The athlete generally sweats through a monotonous 60 minutes of tactical drills, executes a standard stretching routine, and then fades away silently into the shadowy depths of the locker rooms. Absolutely zero schedules are rewritten for these forgettable moments. The massive complex remains undisturbed, and the guards continue pacing their ordinary, uninterrupted patrol routes, where the high-stakes showdowns are meant to command all the glory. Such was the quiet, predictable fate for practically every single competitor fighting for glory at the 2026 Miami Open. But then the narrative violently shifted when Alex Eala stepped onto the baseline, pausing for a quick sip of water before leaning over to playfully ask the massive crowd about their hometowns. When she curiously prompted the breathless audience, a voice cried out from the throng, proudly revealing they had traveled all the way from Los Angeles. She flashed a brilliant smile, charmingly downplaying the agonizingly long 2-hour drive before directly asking for the dedicated traveler's name, which happened to be Andrew. Digging deeper, she discovered his surname was Rivera, and the young prodigy openly marveled at the sheer dedication it took to cross such immense distances just to watch her stretch. As she inquired about his tournament plans, the die-hard fanatic passionately confessed that he had been faithfully attending this exact venue for 10 long years. Her eyes lit up with profound realization, noting with immense pride that after a decade of waiting, the loyal fan finally had a spectacular Filipino warrior to wildly support. This beautifully spontaneous connection reached its peak when the ecstatic supporter was gifted the ultimate, unforgettable prize, a personal photograph alongside the magnetic rising star. Throngs of obsessed followers had actually stormed the grounds hours in advance, desperately claiming every single inch of the metallic fencing and overwhelming the flimsy wooden bleachers surrounding her training space. A dazzling sea of glowing smartphone lenses erupted into the air, instantly recording her every microscopic movement, well before her racket had even made contact with the very first sphere. Rumors swirled through the stunned facility that hundreds had endured over 60 agonizing minutes of standing in the blistering sun, solely to guarantee a prime vantage point for her meaningless warm-up. Meanwhile, scattered across the adjacent asphalt, legendary icons boasting vastly superior global rankings found themselves completely ignored, performing their own routines to nothing but the sound of chirping crickets and empty metal benches. It is a staggering truth that demands a second look. For this is the absolute crux of the anomaly. Absolute titans of the sport, possessing infinitely more prestigious championships under their belts, were completely overshadowed. Elite veterans boasting legendary, decade-long legacies and overflowing cabinets of gleaming silverware toiled away in total obscurity, utterly eclipsed by a mesmerizing 20-year-old phenomenon. This incredible youth, officially entering the draw as merely the 32nd seed, generated such a terrifyingly massive stampede of human bodies that horrified event coordinators were forced to completely rewrite their daily survival manuals. Such an outrageous imbalance of star power totally shatters every established norm within the professional sporting landscape. It completely defied the sacred, ancient logic of point systems and mathematical seeding, tearing up the deeply entrenched rulebook that historical tennis purists always relied upon to dictate public obsession. The electric revolution witnessed on those sun-baked Floridian courts was the ultimate rebellion. A massive legion of fans brazenly crowning their own queen, utterly ignoring the stuffy official leaderboards without a single drop of remorse. Historically, the governing body's sole purpose at these grandiose spectacles is to seamlessly package and heavily sanitize the athletic product for mass consumption. Their rigid mission involves perfectly assigning marquee matchups to the grandest arenas, while carefully spoon-feeding all the lucrative marketing budgets strictly to their pre-approved global superstars. They strive merely to keep the massive machine humming without a single hitch, ensuring every patron eventually departs the sprawling grounds with a sense of mild, predictable satisfaction. Yet, the executives were totally blindsided by an explosive personality whose mere shadow on a secondary court fundamentally weaponized the foot traffic of countless thousands long before the opening ceremony ever kicked off. Frantic, hushed debates regarding arena allocations and terrified boardroom arguments concerning the daily roster began to deeply crack the foundation of the event's leadership. Panicked whispers spread like wildfire among the highest-ranking directors, each desperately begging for a magical solution to wrangle the untamable, suffocating sea of hyper-passionate admirers. Every single frantic reaction painted a vivid picture of a crumbling institution utterly lost without its sacred manual. A dusty text that always coldly dictated that the #1 mathematical seed unconditionally inherited the main Colosseum. That archaic doctrine rigidly commanded that the second seed automatically received the runner-up stadium, while the remaining unknown competitors were casually scattered into the dark, forgotten corners of the complex. This clinical, sterile methodology functioned flawlessly back when the athlete dragging in the most lucrative television ratings also coincidentally possessed the highest mathematical score on the planet. However, that pristine illusion spectacularly imploded. The very second, an unbelievably magnetic icon, sitting practically invisible at the 32nd rung of the ladder, swallowed all the oxygen in the atmosphere. To truly grasp the terrifying scale of this cultural takeover, one must weave these physical stampedes into the explosive digital analytics, forging an undeniable truth that utterly destroys the myth of a mere localized fad. This digital explosion was not fueled by a spectacular, gravity-defying championship point stolen from a globally televised grand finale. It was entirely devoid of any prestigious championship glamour. It was merely raw, unfiltered footage of a warrior quietly sweating through her invisible, solitary preparations. Such tedious visual diaries are typically uploaded by elite veterans only to be instantly buried by the algorithm, forever haunting the internet with miserably low engagement statistics that would embarrass any marketing team. Yet for the mesmerizing athlete, these simple digital breadcrumbs exploded with the nuclear force typically reserved for generational icons who have aggressively cultivated fanatical global empires over decades. An unstoppable, ravenous army has fully mobilized in her honor, viciously attacking every single piece of media she touches and proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that they worship the person, not just the game. Corporate giants gladly empty their deepest pockets just to secure a fraction of such organic devotion. This profound level of obsession simply cannot be engineered in a boardroom, nor does it magically appear overnight. Instead, it breathes and grows because millions have anchored their very hearts to witnessing her journey unfold in the present moment. The turning point that sent a true shockwave through the global tennis establishment arrived during the Australian Open earlier this season. Before she even swung a racket, her opening media session racked up an astonishing 173,000 views, utterly overshadowing an arena that boasted titans like Novak Djokovic. That very same stage hosted heavyweights Aryna Sabalenka and Iga Swiatek, yet the spotlight remained fiercely on the young phenomenon. A mundane routine of sitting behind a microphone shattered the viewership metrics of legendary champions whose combined major titles eclipse entire chapters of the sport's history. Such overwhelming analytics were far from a lucky break. They served as undeniable proof of a quiet storm that had been brewing for months and could no longer be ignored by the elites. Pundits everywhere immediately drew parallels to the sheer pandemonium surrounding Emma Raducanu during the 2021 United States Open. Back then, that British prodigy clawed her way up from the qualifying rounds to claim the ultimate crown without surrendering a single set along the way. Analysts still hail that immaculate run as an absolute statistical miracle, unparalleled in the vast chronicles of athletics. Her legendary march ensnared the imaginations of millions who possessed zero prior interest in the game, triggering a frantic corporate gold rush and an absolute media frenzy. For a fleeting moment, the game shattered its traditional boundaries, all because a wildly unpredictable narrative sliced through the cultural static far more effectively than any manufactured promotional campaign ever could. Thus, the experts watching Alex Eala construct her own sprawling empire are not simply chasing ghosts when they highlight these exact same echoes. The unfolding blueprint feels remarkably and undeniably identical. A youthful warrior armed with a mesmerizing backstory is rapidly capturing immense new territories that the tennis world has spent decades desperately trying to conquer. However, while the British superstar sparked a supernova that burned fiercely over a mere 14 days at a singular venue, the young Filipina's ascent has been a relentless, rolling thunder spanning various continents, countless championships, and endless months, stubbornly refusing to die out even after bitter defeats or grueling slumps. The momentum only swells larger, fueled by a deeply profound magic that cold leaderboards and silver trophies remain entirely incapable of measuring. Pure, unadulterated human connection. She has forged an unbreakable, fiercely emotional bond with an entire populace that sees its very soul reflected whenever she steps onto the baseline. The island nation pulses with the heartbeat of more than 110 million fiercely loyal citizens. Their incredibly fervent sporting heritage usually orbits around the boxing ring and the basketball court, fiercely celebrating any warrior capable of elevating their flag on the international battlefield. Until this prodigious talent finally emerged from the shadows, the racket sport had never offered them a true champion to rally behind at the absolute pinnacle of competition. Everything changed during her explosive tear through the 2025 Miami Open, where, entering merely as the 140th ranked wildcard, she shockingly dismantled fierce contenders like Madison Keys and Jelena Ostapenko. The entire archipelago reacted with the sheer, unbridled euphoria of a people who had starved for decades to witness their ultimate dream materialize. They roared with a deafening intensity that utterly refused to fade into silence long after the final match point was struck. Dubbed the Pinoy Army, this highly coordinated legion of devoted followers operates entirely on another echelon, far beyond the realm of typical fair-weather spectators. These diehards will gladly freeze in deserted midnight bleachers long after regular ticket holders have fled to their beds, meticulously hunting down her every match time across the globe's shifting clocks. They traverse oceans for her. Every single arena she breathes in, from obscure training grounds and cramped media quarters to massive stadiums frantically upsized to handle her mob, becomes flooded with her faithful. Such ferocious allegiance cares absolutely nothing for arbitrary ranking points. It bows only to the undeniable power of shared cultural blood. When she graced the Nike headquarters just before her Florida campaign, the narrative took a massive leap, instantly putting the sport's most cutthroat corporate executives on extremely high alert. Her grand entrance at the sprawling Oregon campus was anything but a standard, obligatory photo opportunity. By deliberately placing her likeness next to immortalized legends who built the very foundation of athletics, a notoriously calculating mega-brand flashed a brilliant neon sign declaring its long-term intentions. The swoosh has boldly placed its chips on a rapidly approaching era, where Alex Eala reigns supreme as a central, defining titan. Whenever the most dominant athletic corporation on the planet throws down that kind of public wager, the entire sprawling ecosystem holds its breath and takes furious notes, lending intense credibility to the swirling whispers of an upcoming, culturally inspired custom apparel line. Bespoke merchandise empires are practically never handed out to athletes lingering around the 32nd spot on the global ladder. Those rare treasures are strictly reserved for transcendent cultural demigods whose magnetic auras bleed far beyond the court, mesmerizing the exact massive demographics that advertisers ruthlessly crave. The mere reality that these colossal negotiations are allegedly unfolding before the prodigy has even lifted a primary tour championship speaks absolute volumes about the terrifyingly lucrative horizon the corporate world envisions. Sam Querrey dropped the bombshell on his wildly popular podcast, and the quote instantly ignited like a wildfire across every single athletic message board and expert broadcast. He suggested the young star might actually be commanding far more worldwide fascination right now than the mighty Aryna Sabalenka herself. Profound insight comes from a veteran spectator who has spent 20 years studying the ebb and flow of tournament crowds, instantly recognizing when a genuine phenomenon unfolds before their eyes. Aryna Sabalenka boasts an undeniable legacy paved with Grand Slam victories and years of unshakable dominance on the court, alongside a monumental global reputation forged through an era of relentless, elite-level triumphs. Elevating a rising competitor with Alex Eala's modest resume to that stratospheric tier of magnetism feels audacious. Yet the resulting debate completely bypassed the subject of silver cups and medals. Instead, the narrative zeroed in on the exact athletes that ignite massive internet searches and dominate fervent digital chatter worldwide, shifting the focus entirely to whom fans swarm in person, and the undeniable proof pouring out of the Miami training grounds, alongside explosive streaming metrics, jam-packed media briefings, and the massive human tide sweeping through the stadium complex, all point toward one inescapable conclusion. Retired American veteran Steve Johnson boiled the entire spectacle down to its absolute essence during that very same broadcast. He plainly stated that the young phenom is undeniably the most magnetic force in the women's game today. No caveats, no arguments, just an absolute certainty. John Isner then elevated the discussion, highlighting the immense cultural earthquake of a transcendent figure rising from a massive, historically overlooked territory. He observed that the sheer volume of spectators she summons borderlines on the absurd, no matter where she sets foot on the globe. Furthermore, he laid bare a staggering reality that the tennis establishment should have recognized decades prior. When a dynamic icon captures the hearts of the Philippines and the vast, sprawling expanse of Southeast Asia, the industry has not merely unearthed a fresh talent, it has violently shattered a barrier that will never be sealed again. The absolute chaos unfolding around the Miami Open practice nets serves as merely the latest blazing symptom of this movement, though its roots run much deeper. This represents the newest thrilling installment of an epic saga that ignited exactly 12 months ago, when an unheralded 140th ranked wildcard arrived in Florida and departed at number 75, leaving 3 major champions broken in her wake. The sporting executives absolutely did not manufacture this breathtaking ascent, nor did the official leaderboards offer any warning of the impending storm. Corporate advertising divisions were entirely powerless to orchestrate such a magical rise. The devoted public took control of the narrative, currently swarming a mere training session in Florida, while overwhelmed organizers scramble to contain a historic phenomenon completely absent from their rulebooks. The moment a simple warm-up rally eclipses the audience of high-stakes championship bouts, the entire athletic world is forced to freeze and witness the spectacle. Alex Eala refuses to pause her meteoric climb while the governing bodies play catch-up to the empire she commands. The fiercely loyal spectators have already settled the debate, leaving those enthralled by her epic tale scrambling to smash that like button. Viewers are urged to subscribe for future chapters and unleash their bold Miami Open prophecies in the comments section below.